Okay, so to start the sleeve, you're gonna do a slip stitch and cast on as you normally would. Then, so pop your hook in, just like usual, tighten the yarn a bit, and you're going to chain 30, just like normal. Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead. So if you want to just pause here, and then when you get to 30, press play again. Okay, so you should have your 30 chains. I've done 20 just for the example, but you should have 30. And now what we're going to do is add an extra 2 chains. I wrote on the piece of paper the other day that it was 3, but I got it wrong. It's actually an extra 2, and I'll write this out in text for you as well. But it's an extra 2 chains, so you should have 32. Now what you could do is you're going to turn it upside down. So the flat V's are facing the floor, and you've got these middle, try to get it to focus. You've got these middle back bumps facing upwards towards you. So you are going to go into the 4th chain from your hook. So there's your hook, and you count, this doesn't count, that's just the loop on your hook. 4th chain from the hook, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you could also count that upside down, whichever way is easier. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're going to go into this middle back bump here that's sticking up, the 4th one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You're just going to insert your hook into the back bump, as you see. So it's flat V on the top, or on the bottom, sorry. You're going into the back bump. I didn't go through all the yarn there. And you're just going to do a normal double crochet stitch, which is the one where you pull up a loop, just one loop. There's no yarning over. Pull up one loop, so you've got 2 on your hook, and then pull through both. And then you do 1 chain, and you skip 1, so it makes the big gap that you're going to work into later. So you're going to miss 1, and then go into the next bump. And then chain 1, miss 1, go into the next bump. Ooh, sorry, I keep looking through my phone instead of looking at it in real life. Okay, so you see how it's working up, and you're getting the big gaps from the spaces you missed. Okay, so just go all the way to the end of the row like that, 1 stitch and 1 chain, and remember working into the back bumps, which will just have a much nicer finish for you. So the flat V's are facing down. You're going into the middle bump at the back, sticking up. If you just pause it here and then press play again when you get to the end of the row. Okay, just like that, I've gone almost to the end. I've got 1 more to go. So what I'll show you, we go into the very last, still got the V's all flat underneath. Gonna go into the last single bump here by the knot. Pull up a loop and pull through both. Now, so this is the stitch where you're going to chain 2 to turn. 1, 2, and then you're going to turn to bring the hook back towards yourself, and you're going to work into the first big gap, just like before. 1 stitch, pull through both, chain 1, in the next big gap, pull through both, and chain 1, and all the way along. Okay, you can pause here and then press play when you get to the end. Okay, I thought I'd just show you the end stitch again. So working into that first gap, we've got our a V here. So working in the big gaps in between the V's, we're going past the last V and into that big gap, just like that. Okay, so I'm sure you've got the hang of this. You know what you're doing with this one. I just thought I'd go over it. So you're going to keep going as many rows as the table said, until I believe the first one, which is 5 after 5 rows. So this counts as 1 row, and this is 2nd row. You can count by the V's, you see, so there's 1 V and then another V rows apart, and you can kind of count them in diagonals. I can actually show you I'm working on something with this stitch at the moment in stripes, a bit like you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's how you can count your rows. And if in doubt, you can pull it apart a little bit and you'll be able to see these lines a little bit clearer if that helps. But you can just count the V's along. So if I wanted to count how thick this stripe is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So what you're going to be doing is actually also what I've done here. I've been adding increases, trying to get to focus, sorry. Been adding increases to make this wider for around my armpit and my shoulder, because it's quite a fitted jumper that I've been making. So as you can see down here, I've put 2 light green V's into the 1 dark green space. So that making an extra stitch in between. So when you do the next row above, you just push the 2 V's from the one apart and put it in there. Anyway, sorry if that is confusing, adding something up, like showing you on something else. Just showing that's what it will look like when it all comes together. So I'm just going to quickly do a few more rows and then we'll get to the increases. Okay, so I've just finished 5 rows, just like you will do when you start your jumper. 5 rows, just like normal. Now, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or is it 4? It doesn't matter. You're going to do your rows like the table says, the right amount. And then you are going to, just like normal, chain 2. And go into the first big gap, just like you did for all the other rows. Your stitch and then chain 1. Now the only difference is the second stitch in, so not the end one, second to last one, you're going to do 1 and a chain like normal, and then a second one and a chain. So you're just doing the same thing twice into 1 gap. And then you'll continue along the row just like normal, doing your 1 stitch in the big gap and chaining 1. All the way along till you reach the second to last stitch on the other side. Sometimes it can be a little bit fiddly figuring out the second to last stitch when you're coming up to it rather than starting the row, but you can still see there is, after this V, there is still a big gap for you to work in there. That's just with your 2 chain. So it can be a little bit hidden, but past the last V, there is still 1. If you pull it apart and you can have a little look. You can also tell if this isn't quite at the end of the row, that normally means there's another gap for you to work in there. See, like the row before, there is a V right at the end. If there isn't, there is 1 more gap. Anyway, so that is the last gap at the end. This is the second to last. And you're going to do the same thing. 1 stitch in a chain and then another stitch in a chain in the same gap. See, 2 sets of V's in the same big gap. And then you'll just put 1 stitch in the end like normal and do your chain 2 and turn. And so for this, the row after the increase row, you're just going to work like normal, but when you come up to your 2 V's in 1 situation, you're just going to pull the V's apart a little bit and find the chain 1 gap you did in between and stick it, put your hook in between the 2 V's, put a stitch and chain 1, and then continue like normal. Stitch and then chain 1, stitch, chain 1, stitch and chain 1, all the way along. Oops. There we go. Okay, now we've come up to the stitch where we have to go in between the two sets of V's again, our increase. We're going to pull it apart and find our chain 1 space and put the hook in between the V's. And pull up a stitch and chain, stitch and a chain, and the final stitch in the end. So as you can see, we've now got 2 stitches on the side of where the double one was from. Well, that's just what the increase does, and it will gradually make the fabric a little bit wider, just like it eventually gets. This is with quite a steep increase. I was doing one every 2 rows. That's not what we're doing, but you can see that it works out evenly as long as you do the same number on each side. So that's the one thing. Sometimes I forget to do an increase on both sides. I just have to double check and count and make sure that there's 2 sets of V's to the 1 space on both sides. Okay, and now you'll just continue like normal, chain 2 and turn until you get to the next number of rows where you have to do an increase like it says on the table. Ooh, just working into the big gaps. Sometimes it might be a little bit tighter, there might be a little bit of a bump, or the stitches are crammed in a little bit more around the increase, but just keep going like normal. Ideally, if you try and keep your tension the same, even if the gap is a bit tighter, because it will even out once the fabric is, as you build on it, these things do kind of even out. It just works out nicely, which is good. So don't worry if it's a little bit bumpy over where the increase was. That's normal. So yeah, and you'll just keep going and going. I hope this is helpful, and if you've got any questions, just give me a shout. And sorry this is really long. I hope it at least somewhat makes sense, and if what I showed you on the green jumper is confusing, don't worry about that, just focus on what I've done here. But if it is helpful to see a larger example, then I just thought I'd include it anyway. So yeah, will be your gradual increases.